The sky above Zalor 9, the alien war world, burned with green lightning. On the ground, thousands of alien warriors gathered inside the grand arena. They stood tall, proud, with shining armor and glowing eyes. They were the Draxion, a powerful warrior race. At the center of the arena stood a human. He was not in armor. He had no weapons, just simple boots, a torn shirt, and strong, calm eyes. His name was Sergeant Mason, and today, he was the test. The alien commander, General Kraxus, stood high above on a platform. His voice echoed through the arena. "Today we see what the human is truly made of," he shouted. "He will enter the wildlands. He will face the Grakor, alone." The crowd roared with laughter. The Grakor was a monster, a huge, terrifying beast that had killed hundreds. Sharp claws, armored skin, and a scream that could stop a man's heart. Even Draxion soldiers feared it. No one had survived more than one night in the wildlands. Mason looked up at the sky. He didn't smile. He didn't shout. He just took a deep breath and stretched his shoulders. Two guards pushed him forward toward a metal door. One of them smirked. "Try not to scream too loud, human." Mason said nothing. The door opened with a loud hiss. Hot air rushed out. Thick jungle trees swayed in the distance. Strange alien birds cried out. The jungle was dark, alive, and waiting. He stepped in. The door slammed shut behind him. The test had begun. Inside the wildlands, the air was heavy and wet. Trees glowed with blue veins. Insects buzzed, some as big as his hand. Vines moved like they were breathing. The ground was soft and full of hidden dangers. Mason walked slowly. Every step was careful. He had no map, no food, no water, but his mind was clear. He had survived worse before. He had been a soldier on Earth, trained in harsh lands, deserts, and frozen mountains. But this was different. He wasn't just surviving. He was being watched. Something moved in the trees. Something large. Mason crouched behind a rock and listened. A deep growl echoed through the jungle. The Grakor. It was close. Mason looked around. He found sharp rocks and thick branches. He began to work. Quietly. Quickly. Building something. Back at the arena, General Kraxus watched the jungle screen with a bored expression. "It's already over," he said. "The beast will kill him before nightfall." Another alien officer laughed. "Humans are weak. I give him an hour." But not everyone agreed. A younger alien soldier, Terran, watched closely. His eyes narrowed. "This one is different," he said softly. Night fell over the jungle. Mason sat high in a tree, rope made from vines wrapped around his waist. A small fire burned below, a trap. He wasn't hiding from the beast. He was calling it. And it came. From the shadows, a massive shape stepped into the light. The Grakor. It was even larger than Mason imagined. Its skin was black and silver. Its teeth long and sharp. Its tail swayed like a blade. Glowing blue eyes stared at the fire. Then, it looked up, straight at Mason. The beast roared. The jungle shook. Birds screamed and flew. Mason stayed calm. He slowly unhooked his vine rope, held a sharpened stick in one hand, and dropped from the tree, landing hard between the fire and the beast. The Grakor growled. Mason didn't run. He took a step forward. "I'm not afraid of you," he said. The Grakor screamed and charged. Mason threw the burning log at its feet. The fire flashed. The beast paused, confused. He used that moment, leaping aside, rolling into the mud, grabbing the spear and stabbing at its leg. The tip hit armor. The beast roared in pain but didn't fall. Mason didn't fight to kill. He fought to be seen. After a few minutes, the Grakor stopped. It stared at him, and then it backed away. It didn't leave. It didn't attack again. It just stood there, watching, breathing, waiting. Mason lowered the spear. "I'm not your enemy," he said, voice low. You're just another soldier in this world, same as me. The Greycore growled softly. Then it sat down. Back in the arena, the alien screen went dark. Mason's signal had vanished. He's dead. A noble laughed. But General Craxus frowned. No, something is wrong. Terran smiled quietly. He's not dead, he whispered. He's just getting started. The jungle was alive. Strange glowing vines crawled along the trees. Sharp leaves hung low like claws. Alien birds cried out in the night, and heavy footsteps echoed in the dark. But Sergeant Mason was still breathing. He sat beside a small fire, under a rock ledge, staring across the clearing at a shadow. A massive shadow. The Greycore. It didn't leave after their first fight. It stayed. It sat by the trees, half hidden, glowing blue eyes watching Mason without blinking. Mason didn't speak. He didn't move fast. His body was bruised, his arm cut, but he was alive. He knew the rules of survival. Don't show fear. Don't show weakness. Show respect. He slowly pulled out a chunk of roasted jungle root he had cooked and placed it between them. Then quietly, he leaned back against the stone. The Greycore didn't come forward at first, it just watched. Then, after many minutes, it stepped forward. Slow. Careful. Its large head sniffed the food. Then it ate. Mason smiled faintly. Step 1. Trust. By morning, Mason had moved deeper into the jungle. The Greycore followed from a distance, not like a hunter, but like a shadow. It didn't growl. It didn't chase. It simply walked behind him. Mason found a stream. He cleaned his wounds and drank the cool, clear water. When he looked up, the beast was standing nearby, drinking from the same stream. No fear. No fight. Something had changed. At the alien command base, panic was beginning. General Craxus stood in front of the command screen, face tight with anger. We lost his tracker 2 nights ago, a soldier reported. No body, no signs. He's dead, said a noble. But Terran, the younger alien officer, frowned. No, he said. If he was dead, the jungle would be louder. What do you mean? Craxus asked. Terran replied. When the jungle goes quiet, it means a predator is nearby. But for 2 nights now, the jungle is calm, silent. Craxus stared at the map. No, Draxian Patrol has ever tamed the Greycore, he said slowly. Exactly, Terran whispered. But he's not one of us. He's human. Back in the jungle, Mason built a small shelter from thick vines and wide leaves. He used sharp stones to make tools. He created a trap using a spring-loaded branch to catch small animals. All the while, the Greycore watched. It stayed close, never more than 20 paces away. When Mason cooked, it crept closer. When he moved, it moved too. At night, when the cold winds blew through the trees, Mason looked over and saw the beast curled beside his shelter like a giant living wall, protecting him. On the 3rd day, Mason approached the Greycore. It growled once, but not loud. He didn't carry a weapon, just a piece of roasted root in one hand, and his voice. I don't know if you understand me, he said, but you're not so different from me, are you? The beast blinked slowly. You were trained to kill, so was I. You were thrown out here like a monster, so was I. The Greycore lowered its head slightly. Mason stepped forward. Very slowly, he placed the root on a flat stone, and then he did something crazy. He reached out his hand. The jungle went quiet again. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then the beast leaned in and touched his palm with its nose. Warm, rough, alive. Mason didn't pull back. The Greycore didn't bite. Instead, it sat down and let out a deep, slow breath. It had accepted him. Far above, hidden drones recorded every moment. Inside the alien command base, General Craxus watched the footage, eyes wide in disbelief. He fed it, he whispered. He touched it, said another. And it didn't kill him, said Terran. Silence filled the room. Craxus stood up slowly. This is no longer a test, he growled. This is a threat. Back in the jungle, Mason sat beside the Greycore as stars blinked above. He leaned back and looked at the sky. "I don't think they expected me to live," he said softly. "But they really didn't expect you." The beast looked at him. Mason smiled. "I'm going to call you Shadowclaw." The Greycore didn't respond, but it didn't leave, and that was enough. 3 nights earlier, the jungle was loud with the sound of predators. Sergeant Mason had just built a weak shelter using thick branches and wide alien leaves. His hands were scratched. His chest burned from climbing rough bark. The air was wet and hot, filled with buzzing insects and glowing spores that floated like tiny lights. He knew something was watching him. But what? The answer came at sunset. He was crouched beside a small fire, roasting strange root plants he had dug from the ground. They tasted bitter, but they kept him alive. He heard something behind the trees. Snap-it, a branch broke. He stood up, slowly picking up a sharpened stick he'd carved from alien wood. His eyes scanned the thick jungle wall. Silence. Then he saw them. Eyes. Big, bright, blue, and they were getting closer. The Greycore stepped into the firelight. It was taller than a warhorse, heavier than a tank with skin like metal stone. Its long tail swung slowly. Thick claws dug into the ground. Steam rose from its mouth. It didn't run. It didn't roar. It watched, and Mason did the same. His fingers gripped the stick tighter. His breathing slowed. His heart pounded, but his feet stayed still. "You gonna test me now?" he muttered. The Greycore tilted its head. Then suddenly, it charged. No warning, just pure power. Mason jumped back as claws ripped through the earth where he stood. He rolled, grabbed a burning stick from the fire and threw it straight at the beast's face. Whoosh! Flames flashed. The Greycore paused. That was all Mason needed. He darted to the side, leading the beast away from his shelter. He didn't run blindly. He ran into a trap. Earlier that day, he had dug a shallow pit and covered it with weak leaves. As he passed it, he shouted and stomped his feet. The Greycore chased him, and then, crash! Its front leg dropped into the pit. The beast roared, falling to one side. It wasn't deep enough to trap it, but it stopped it. Mason didn't attack. He stood at a safe distance, holding his stick low. The Greycore growled, pulled its leg free, and stood back up, but it didn't charge again. It stared at him, confused. Why wasn't the human attacking? Why wasn't he running? Mason crouched and reached into his bag. He pulled out a slice of cooked root, burnt, smoky, but warm. He tossed it to the beast's feet. The Greycore stared at it, then stared at Mason. Then, without breaking eye contact, it ate the food. That was the moment. The wild creature that had torn apart armored scouts paused, accepted food, didn't kill. Now, back in the present time, Mason sat near the same camp. The Greycore, now called Shadowclaw, lay quietly nearby. Mason poked the fire. "You could have killed me," he said softly. Shadowclaw's ears flicked, but he didn't move. "But you didn't." He leaned back against a rock, watching the stars. "That was the moment I knew," he whispered. "You're not just a monster." Shadowclaw blinked slowly. "You're a soldier, like me." Back in the alien control tower, General Craxus reviewed hidden footage from a drone. He watched the Greycore eat from Mason's hand, watched it follow him like a trained hound. He crushed a datapad in his fist. "This is impossible." Terran stood beside him. "Or maybe it's just human." Craxus turned sharply. "What do you mean?" Terran looked at the screen. "Maybe they don't tame beasts with power, but with something else." The days in the wildlands passed slowly, but Mason was no longer alone. Wherever he walked, Shadowclaw followed, a giant, silent shadow moving through the trees. Its heavy feet made no sound now. Its deadly growl had softened. It no longer hunted Mason. It protected him, and Mason knew it. One morning, Mason woke to find Shadowclaw standing over him. Its huge body blocked the rising suns. A strange sound rumbled in its throat. Not a growl, not a warning, but something like a purr. Mason blinked, sat up, and smiled. "Morning, buddy." He tossed the beast a chunk of fire-roasted meat he'd hunted the day before. Shadowclaw caught it midair and swallowed it whole. Then it sat, just like a loyal dog. That day, Mason began training, not to control Shadowclaw, but to understand him. He watched how the beast moved, how it sniffed the air, how its tail twitched when it sensed danger, how it tapped its claws 3 times before growling. He mimicked those sounds back, slowly, patiently. At first, Shadowclaw just stared, but then it tapped its claw once. Mason smiled. "Good. That means yes, right?" Shadowclaw tilted its head. Mason raised his hand slowly, pointing at a tall rock. "Go." The beast didn't move. Mason tried again. "Go." This time, Shadowclaw walked to the rock and sat beside it. Mason nodded. "Yeah, we're getting there." Back at the alien control base, the generals argued. "It's been over a week," shouted one. "He should be bones by now." General Craxus was silent, watching the newest footage sent by the stealth drones. It showed Mason standing calmly, with the Grakor sitting beside him, a pet. No, a partner. Craxus clenched his jaw. "He's not dying," he said coldly. "He's building an army." That evening, rain fell. The jungle turned dark and cold. Mason built a shelter of thick leaves and vine-wrapped branches. The firewood was wet and smoke filled the small camp, but Shadowclaw stayed. When lightning cracked the sky, the beast moved closer to Mason's side. It sat beside the shelter, blocking the wind with its huge body. Mason leaned against it, tired, shivering. "You're not so bad," he whispered. "They call you a monster. But monsters don't do this." He pulled out a small piece of old cloth, a torn corner of a flag from Earth. He tied it around Shadowclaw's thick wrist like a bracelet. "There," he said. "Now you're part of my squad." The beast blinked and didn't remove it. The next morning, Mason woke to a sound, growling. He jumped up, grabbed his spear. But Shadowclaw was already standing in front of him, growling toward the trees. Out of the shadows came a smaller jungle predator, its back covered in spikes. It hissed and stepped forward. Mason raised his weapon. But Shadowclaw growled once, louder, and took a step forward. The smaller creature froze. Then it turned and fled. Mason lowered his spear. "You protected me." Shadowclaw turned its head slightly, and for the first time, Mason swore the beast looked proud. That night, Mason carved a symbol into the stone near their camp. 2 shapes, one human, one beast, standing side by side. "We're not enemies anymore," he said. "We're something else." He looked at the stars. "I don't think they'll like this back at the base, but I also don't care." He reached out, placing his hand against Shadowclaw's giant shoulder. "Because when I walk back through those gates, you're coming with me." The Grakor didn't roar. It just blinked slowly, as if it already knew. 10 days had passed. Still no signal. No body, no bones, no proof that the human was dead. At the Draxian military base, tension filled the command hall like thick smoke. General Craxus stood before a large hologram, showing the jungle's scan feed. Red zones flickered, movement blurred, but Mason's tracker, silent since day 3, remained dead. "He should be gone," Craxus growled. One noble hissed, "No human could survive that long." And yet, none of them could say it out loud. What if he did? In a cold steel room nearby, Taryn, the young alien officer, studied the footage from the hidden scout drones. What he saw chilled him. Trees broken in clean lines, massive footprints, half-eaten jungle predators left in pieces, signs of firing and structure. "This isn't random," he whispered. "This is a camp." Craxus burst in behind him. "What did you find?" Taryn pointed at the screen. "He's not just alive. He's Thriving. Craxus slammed his fist into the wall. Send a recon unit, full gear. Track him. 6 elite. Draxian scouts flew over the jungle in a black glass hovercraft. Their armor was reinforced, their weapons set to kill. The ship hovered low, then dropped them into the trees. Search wide. Recover the body, or what's left of it, said the squad leader. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Birds didn't sing. Leaves didn't rustle. Even the wind felt heavy. One soldier crouched by a footprint. He touched the soil, then looked up, confused. This isn't human, he said, but it's also not wild. What is it then? Asked another. The soldier stared ahead, eyes wide. It's trained. They moved deeper. Suddenly, crack. The lead scout fell into a deep pit. Vines snapped. Spikes popped from the floor. He screamed, caught by the leg. Trap! Shouted another. But it was too late. From the shadows, something huge moved. A roar tore through the trees. The Draxian froze. One scout opened fire wildly. Bright blue lasers lit the jungle, hitting nothing. Fall back. Fall. A giant shape leapt from the dark, shining black armor, glowing eyes, thunderous steps. The Greycore. But this Greycore didn't act wild. It moved with precision, and behind it, a shadow stepped from the trees, a human, calm, dirty, tired, alive, Sergeant Mason. The scout leader stared in disbelief. That's impossible. Mason raised a hand. The Greycore stopped, then sat, like a trained beast, like a pet. The soldiers didn't shoot. They couldn't. Their hands trembled. Their minds broke. Mason took one step forward. Go home, he said simply. Tell them I'm coming. One soldier dropped his weapon and ran. The others followed. They didn't look back. At the base, the recon team returned in silence. One was injured. 2 were missing. All were pale. Craxus roared, "Where is the human?" The leader dropped to one knee. He's alive, and he tamed it. Tamed what? Craxus asked. The scout looked up, voice shaking. The Greycore. Gasps filled the hall. Impossible, hissed a general, but Terran stepped forward, eyes shining with realization. It's not impossible, he said. It's human. That night under the stars, Mason sat beside Shadowclaw. He scratched the beast's neck. It rumbled with peace. They're coming soon, Mason said. They'll send more. Shadowclaw blinked. But this time, we're ready. The suns were rising over the cliffs of Xylor 9. Inside the massive alien base, alarms stayed quiet, but tension filled the air. The guards at the outer gates were bored, expecting another slow day. Then the ground began to shake. A low rumble. Steady, getting closer. One guard stood and looked toward the jungle wall. What is that? He muttered. The other raised his weapon, confused. Then, trees moved, birds flew out, and the vines parted. From the shadows stepped a shape. A man. Dusty boots, torn shirt, calm eyes. Sergeant Mason. But he was not alone. Behind him walked something, massive, the Greycore towering, glowing blue eyes, a living tank of muscle and fury. But this time, it didn't roar. It didn't attack. It walked calmly, like a guard dog, like a companion, like a pet. Inside the base, sirens blared. Open the four. Main gate, someone shouted. He's alive! General Craxus rushed to the watch deck, his eyes locked on the scene below. Mason stood just outside the gate, hand resting on Shadowclaw's shoulder. The beast growled once, but softly. Craxus's jaw tightened. Let them in, he said. The metal gate opened with a loud hiss. Mason stepped through. The courtyard fell silent. Hundreds of Draxion soldiers watched from every level, shocked, confused, amazed. No one spoke. No one moved. He walked to the center of the base like he owned it. Shadowclaw padded beside him, each step shaking the ground. At the heart of the courtyard, Mason stopped. He looked up at the watching crowd. Then he pulled something from his belt, his old tracking chip. Dead, cracked, burned. He threw it on the ground in front of General Craxus. "You said survive," Mason said calmly. "So I did." "No." One laughed. No one dared. The only sound was the deep breathing of the Grecor. Craxus stepped forward, face hard. "You disobeyed your orders." "I wasn't given orders," Mason replied. "I was given a death sentence." He pointed at the beast. "You tried to feed me to this, but instead, we became something better." Shadowclaw let out a low growl. Craxus stared into its glowing eyes and stepped back. He wasn't just looking at a beast. He was looking at a bond. From the upper balcony, Taran watched with pride in his eyes. He turned to the high nobles. "You sent him to die." He came back with death walking beside him. One noble whispered, "He controls it?" "No," Taran said. "He doesn't control it. He earned it." Below, Mason turned to the crowd. "You treat humans like dirt, like pets, like we're too soft to survive your world." He looked at Shadowclaw, who sat proudly beside him. "Then tell me, who's soft now?" He walked away without waiting for permission. The Grecor followed, not like a slave, not like a prisoner, like a soldier walking beside his commander. Later, in a private chamber, Craxus stared at the screen showing Mason's return on repeat. "He made it," he whispered. "He didn't just survive," Taran replied. "He changed the rules." Craxus clenched his fists. "This isn't over." "No," Taran agreed. "It's just beginning." That night, in the quiet of his assigned quarters, Mason sat on the floor beside Shadowclaw, who rested peacefully like a mountain. Mason looked at the stars through the glass window. "Let them try again," he said softly. He placed his hand on the beast's thick shoulder. "They'll never understand it. You weren't the test," he smiled. "I was." The next day, the city of Veldor Prime, capital of the Draxion Empire, buzzed like never before. From the highest towers to the deepest mines, one story raced through the empire faster than light. The human came back, with the Grecor at his side. In the grand assembly hall, alien nobles gathered in silence. Thousands of seats were filled with warlords, strategists, and scientists, each one wearing the same expression: shock. On the giant display screen, a video played on repeat. Sergeant Mason walking calmly through the gates of the jungle bay, with Shadowclaw behind him. No chains, no fear, no control, only mutual respect. The footage paused on one frame, Mason gently patting the Grecor's armored shoulder. The beast didn't flinch. It leaned into his touch. Gasps filled the hall. "That's not submission," a noble whispered. "That's loyalty." In the center chamber, General Craxus stood before the council. His voice was tight. "It's a trick. The Grecor is weak, injured. The human used technology." From the crowd, Taran rose. "No," he said firmly. "The beast isn't controlled. It chose him." Craxus snarled. "This human mocks our traditions. He must be punished." Taran looked around the chamber. "Or maybe we must change our traditions." Silence fell. No one had ever questioned the old ways. Until now. Meanwhile, in the lower quarters of the city, alien children gathered around a holoscreen. They didn't cheer for the generals. They didn't study the old Draxion warriors. They watched. The human and the beast. "I want to be like him," one child said. "Me too," said another. "He didn't kill the monster, he made it his friend." Inside the palace guest chamber, Mason sat across from Shadowclaw. He'd been invited to the capital for recognition, though he knew the politics were still messy. Most didn't know whether to fear him or worship him. He didn't care. He gave the Grecor another piece of dried meat, then leaned back. "I've seen worse politics back home," he muttered. Shadowclaw rumbled quietly. Then came a knock. The door opened, and a group of alien guards stepped in. Behind them, Empress Vylin, the ancient ruler of the Draxion people. Her glowing robes flowed behind her like rivers of stars. She had ruled for centuries, but never seen what now stood before her. Her eyes locked on Mason. "You are the one they sent to die," she said softly. Mason stood. "And now I'm the one they can't explain." She slowly walked closer, then looked at Shadowclaw. The Graker didn't growl. It bowed. Gasps echoed behind her. Even the Empress looked stunned. "In all my life," she whispered, "the Graker bowed to no one." Mason placed a hand on the beast's head. "I didn't force him," he said. "I treated him like a being, not a monster." She looked at him with wide, ancient eyes. "Perhaps your species is not weak," she said. "Perhaps," Mason said. "We're just different." That night, across 1,000 planets, broadcasts played the same message. A human walked through death and came back with death as his companion. He wasn't broken. He wasn't scared. He wasn't alone. He had Shadowclaw. In the training halls of Draxian warriors, statues were carved, not just of the Greycore, but of a man standing beside it, one hand on its shoulder, both watching the horizon, and below it, a new phrase was carved in Draxion stone. "Strength isn't what you conquer. Strength is what chooses to walk beside you." In his private room, Mason sat on the floor, resting against the giant sleeping beast. He looked up at the stars. "They thought sending me here would end me." He smiled, "But it gave me a friend." He reached over, patting Shadowclaw's side gently. "And they'll never forget our faces."